Hey everyone, there's so much buzz around AI right now, but you know when AI is not helpful? When it ruins your podcast recording. That's right. I'm in a love-hate relationship with one particular AI note taker right now. Because while it killed our ability to capture video for this particular episode, it did record the audio. The interview you're about to hear is so good that we just couldn't scrap it and re-record. So I hope you'll forgive the AI and there will be no video on today's episode. But unlike AI, we at Diagnostic Guru like to make sure we keep our listeners happy. So as an apology, we added some off the record outtakes at the end. Trust me, it's a fair trade. Enjoy. Hey there, I'm Leslie Northrup. I'm a molecular geneticist, a neuroendocrinologist, and have served as the Chief Scientific Officer and Chief Diagnostic Officer for some of the most innovative companies in women's health, reproductive science, and personal wellness. Titles aside, I think of myself as a scientist first. It's who I am. And like most women in science I know, there's a story behind how I got here. Lots of stories. And those stories inspired me to start Diagnostic Guru, a podcast that dives into the complicated world of women in science, uncovering the realities of their career progression, and normalizing the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm incredibly excited to have the opportunity to speak with our next Diagnostic Guru, Andrea Mohamed, currently the COO and co-founder of QuantumBloom. Andrea is a transformative leader and courageous disruptor with over 2 decades of experience in driving organizational growth and systemic change. After holding high-level corporate positions in marketing and communication, she now focuses on tackling a critical challenge in the tech industry, creating environments where early career women in STEAM can authentically thrive. Can I just say that again? Being our authentic self. QuantumBloom's mission is particularly meaningful to me and near and dear to my heart because it addresses the pressing need for supportive spaces for women in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Andrea's expertise and experience in advocacy for women in STEAM have garnered recognition in publications like Newsweek, and she's a sought-after speaker on workforce development, presenting at prestigious venues such as the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. Known for authentic and courageous leadership, Andrea combines strategic insight with personal narrative in her advocacy work. She holds degrees from Northern Michigan University and Duke University, where she graduated in the top 10% of her MBA class. Her commitment to addressing issues such as the poor treatment of women in business and empowering women power led to her invitation today as my guest on this podcast. So here we are, Andrea. Welcome.
It's so great to be here, Leslie. Thank you for having me. It's always weird, too, to hear your own bios read back.
Well, it's impressive to say the least. So I can't wait to dig in further and get under the layer of it all.
Thank you.
Well, I like to start every episode with the same question. What are you most proud of in your career to date?
Oh, gosh. I think having the courage to get out of corporate. There's so many things along a 20-plus year journey that I'm really proud of in things I delivered in teams I built and was a part of, and initiatives that felt game-changing and making the world a better place. But really, in this season of my life, I've never been more aligned and free to pursue professionally what matters most to me. And so I feel like I'm really proud that I had the guts and courage to forgo a corporate salary and bonus and the stability of all that and great benefits, because my husband's now are not as good. It's a pain point. But yeah, I really think it's that courage to go out on my own.
Well, I think that's a great achievement. I think most people wish they could have that courage to take that jump or that leap. And, you know, you're right. We're instilled by our parents, depending on your generation, that you have to have a good job that consistently pays with health benefits. And I'm sure when you did make that jump, I'm sure some of your inner circle was probably a little bit more vocal or scared for you than you were for your own inner self at that time?
Yeah. And I think the only reason I was able to do it is I also had sort of the experience coming out of corporate too. And, the stability that came with having the steadiness of that for so many years and being able to financially go out on my own and not it feel like a major risk to our lifestyle or livelihood. So I think there's a lot to be said for it was, I'm privileged to be in a position that I can and not feel really risky, but still, those around me, especially my mom. I remember I was about 6 months in and she's like, well, how long are you going to do this? And in the beginning, I actually felt more risk and fear around the money stuff than I do now because I was so accustomed to what was coming in and spending patterns. So the first kind of beginning part was really the big adaptive part. And then I kind of settled into like, oh, we're going to be okay. We can be okay on one paycheck for a while. But that was a big adjustment, a really big adjustment.
Yeah, you definitely have to change your whole mindset. But I love the mom piece. I'm kind of going through that right now. She's like, yeah, I don't know what you do right now. And I'm just like,
she's ridiculously proud, to be very clear. She was just here. But I think, she has always instilled in me that independence and money is power, and always to have my own means of production to like manage my life. And that's always been really important to me as well, like the independence of having my own paycheck and being able to know that, I can always rely on myself. And I think that's pretty common for children of divorced parents, and you see your mom struggle after those divorces. And so that's, something she instilled in me and I really value. And like I said, it was a big adjustment for me too, to kind of change my bank account habits.
Yeah. I know your spending habits. I want to go a little bit back in time, on your academic achievements. I mean, we already highlighted your degrees and great success. But what's interesting, you recently posted on LinkedIn about how you dropped out of a PhD program in psychology. That's not an easy decision. Myself, going through it, there were days where I definitely wanted to quit. So could you just share a little bit more about that decision process, how you got there, and why you feel it's significant to share with others through your platform and today whoever's listening?
Yeah. So I'm a first generation college student. So, I didn't have a lot of role models around me. I'm from a very rural part of Michigan, but I was a really good student. And so I had started at one university, downstate Michigan. I felt like a fish out of water, moved closer to home to a regional school very quickly. And then I really excelled. I was I was a psychology student. A lot of that was driven by wanting to understand myself. And it was a small school, so I had the opportunity to work in a lot of different professors' labs and be their TAs because there was no graduate program. And so that really positioned me to have sort of the CV that graduate programs wanted to see. And so I actually got in straight out of my bachelor's into a PhD social psychology program in Chicago. And it was like, holy crap. It's like, I'm a first generation college student. Now I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to become a doctor. All this hard work and all these things I did are paying off. I remember going to an orientation sort of event, and they kind of let me in on a secret. They're like, you're the only admitted student so far. Everybody else we're still evaluating. I'm like, well, that's cool. And so I was one of 6 students admitted that year into this program. And I sort of felt like I've made it, right? I've achieved my goal. And I was so underprepared for what I experienced. And, it was, I kind of, looking back, right, it's like I struggled with belonging and feeling like I was a fish out of water, so culture fit was a huge challenge. I went from this very small regional kind of community-oriented undergrad program into a research one, cutthroat, take you out at the kneecaps. I was very quickly oriented to how my advisor was in some sort of feud with another professor and how you better not have that other professor on your committees.
Oh my God.
And all sorts of things. And I think all of it just felt like I turned into like fight or flight kind of mode, and I chose flight. I had perfect grades. It was a hugely difficult decision. And, it wasn't because I couldn't do it. I had perfect grades. It's like, it wasn't because I wasn't interested in social psychology and becoming a professor. It had everything to do with culture and belonging. And so, all of this makes sense in retrospect. I start to put the pieces together on today's narrative where I help women, develop a sense of belonging in places that historically have excluded them. And I guess that's what it was for me too. It's like I was first generation college student from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm not supposed to end up at a Research One institution in Chicago. And so I know what that feels like to be, this place wasn't built for you, right? It wasn't built for you. And I didn't have the tools to be successful.
Wow, my heart feels heavy a little bit on that. One, a little brief of sadness, but also enlightened just hearing that story, because it's almost like you foreshadowed your future of where you're supposed to be and having that courage, to make that change. Did you feel like after that you were consistently trying to figure out where you're supposed to be or where you fit in?
Yeah, I had worked so hard to build that CV that graduate programs wanted to see, all sorts of TA and research lab stuff. And then I made it a semester, and then I'm like, what do I do now? I was expecting to be in grad school 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend at the time lived in Chicago. The summer before I started school, I had a temp job doing marketing for an insurance brokerage at the Hancock Building, which was very exciting to be downtown Chicago in the Hancock Building. And after I decided to leave that graduate program, I went back. They wanted me back. They're like, oh, great, you're back. Like, come back and do this marketing stuff. So I kind of fell into marketing that way. But I floundered around for a good, couple of years, because this was also, I graduated from undergrad in 1999. So this is now like the beginning of 2000. The dot-com bubble was bursting.
Yeah.
Not a great time for a young person with little experience to be on the job market. And so I found myself kind of jumping from one not great role to the next and facing layoffs and all sorts of things, just failing to launch. It really felt like my early days were very like a failing to launch kind of scenario. And then you fast forward, right? So I end up at Duke, where it's the only business school I applied to. I'm like, if I'm going to business school, I'm going to the best school I can get into. And it was Duke. I live in North Carolina.
That's a good one to apply to. So good for you for getting into number one.
And then I realized, so here I am in business school, and our dean was an organizational psychologist.
Oh, wow.
And we had other psychologists who were teaching like leadership and management and courses like that. And so things started to come together. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up working in a big research organization doing a ton of social science work. And so as my career progressed, I'm like, okay, I've got this business thing. I got this psychology thing. And I get to do it in a social science organization. I myself never became that social science, PhD, but I work with them all the time. I understood their methods. Yeah. I understood the scientific approach. I understood the importance of being accurate with data and why there's a tension in communicating about research results from a scientific perspective and how they always want to caveat everything. But I had to market it and get them comfortable with like being able to like make lay audiences interested in very technical research. And so it all eventually made sense. Yeah. But it certainly wasn't a well-oiled plan that I executed so that it would make sense.
I love it when your subconscious drives your conscious to where you should be, and that you got a second chance to utilize the skills that you were hoping to get a doctorate in, but you used them in the business world, which is really where it looks like you thrive at and are really successful at.
Yeah. I mean, business is all about relationships.
Yeah.
Like, once you determine you have a viable product, then it's all relationships and execution and all sorts of things that have, psychological components, social components, teams and whatnot, leadership, all these things that kind of all started to meld together.
What motivated you, to leave your corporate roles? You kind of touched upon that a little bit. But now be a part of QuantumBloom, and you joined your co-partner, I think it's Anne, right?
Yeah.
and you became a co-founder. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So also was not the plan. It's not like I left corporate and that's where my destination was going to be. In fact, I took 6 months off, which were glorious. I call it my half gap year. It's fantastic. And I had the opportunity to reconnect with Anne. So Anne and I, ironically, had been at the same company, but we knew of each other, but didn't really run in the same circles. But we did have a shared mutual friend. And that mutual friend was aware of what Anne was doing. She had also left corporate and went out and hung her own shingle and did consulting because she was burnt out on it too. And she had been working on this idea to support early career women as they're transitioning into their professional lives in technology. And she herself is a career technology executive. She has an impressive, crazy resume. And she, realized some 8-10 years ago, the next generation has to have it better. Yeah. And we have to start at that critical, vulnerable point of early career because the need to unlearn and relearn is really important at that point because what makes us wildly successful students, and we see a ton of evidence on the academic achievement of women outpacing men across a lot of categories. It's not that we're not capable or competent, but the things that make us great students, keep your head down, do good work, like pay attention to the syllabus, do your stuff on time, turn it in on time, right? All the, you have this playbook, right? And instruction manual in that syllabus that you know exactly what you need to do to be the top of your class. And then you go to work. And all those things that made you a great student are not necessarily the things that are going to make you great at work. And no one takes us aside and says, hey, Andrea, all that stuff about checking boxes, doing all the things, thoroughness, excellence, all that. Yeah, that's important. But you also need to be building relationships. You also need to know how to amplify your work. You have to be able to self-promote. You have to be able to manage when you face invariably bias and barriers in the workforce. And so Anne had this moment where it's like, we have to intervene early. And then the data supports this too, where it used to be that half of all women left technology by the age of 35. And with the newest generations, we're seeing that shift left, where by the age of 30, 68% of women with STEM degrees have left STEM, 20% in the first 12 months. And so what we're seeing is the next generation of women aren't putting up with the same things that their mothers did. Right. And good on them for that. Let's be clear. Right. Good on them for that they're going to vote with their feet and they're going to find a place of belonging. But that's really bad when you look at the cost of turnover that's happening in companies. It impacts our innovation, just talking about innovation and R&D and the voices that are involved in that. Frankly, women are now not involved then in the jobs of the future. So much is technology oriented and so much of that is happening in male dominated spaces. So if there's this mass exodus, right, it's like we're all losing out. Society loses out. Companies have to pay all the costs associated with turnover. Women have to go figure out their next path because they just spent, 4, 6, however many years getting engineering degrees and IT or whatever, or their biology degrees or whatever it was. And now they're not working in those fields where they invested all that time.
Can you list some of the reasons why they're leaving?
Yeah. Well, if you think about various career theories on like, why do we choose the professions that we choose, all those types of things, it comes down to sort of 3 key things. One is our belief in our abilities. Like, do I have the aptitude to do this job? The second is around expected outcomes. Can I be good at this job? And the third is around perceived barriers. How difficult it is for me to work in this field or whatever it is. And so when you think about women leaving because they're going to have a family, I am sure that wasn't the first time they thought that they might become a mother when they're, 27 years old in a PhD program or whatever it might be. But likely, I'll hypothesize on this. It's likely that they did not see that their outcomes being a mother in those fields would be what they want them to be, and the cost would not be worth it, right? And so the barriers, right, there's barriers that they're facing as they learn more and more about the realities of certain fields. I was talking with a semiconductor executive this week and sharing some of these data, and very quickly, it's like, well, women, make those choices once they're deciding to, have children and have families and, their circumstances change and all those types of things. I said, sure. And I said, we have to stop thinking that this is just women's personal choices. Instead of saying this was driven by a woman's personal choice, we need to flip that and say, what is it about my organization that makes this a place that parents can't thrive?
Exactly. Like in the workplace, even in the university, I mean, my gosh, when I was, in grad school, in equal pay from the female professors, like it goes on and on. So you see other women that you're, looking up to who are your mentors going through this. I mean, that's why I decided to go to academia. I was like, I don't want to go to that.
Right. Your exposure experience is not a good one. You're not seeing role models that have your perception of like quality of life or satisfaction in their jobs or whatever it might be. And it's really scary. I don't have the specific data on this, but the higher up a woman goes in academic achievement in STEM, the less likely she stays in STEM.
Wow.
Right? So like you invested and your chances of actually staying in STEM drop.
Wow. That's so disheartening.
It's insane.
So how are you and Anne and QuantumBloom, what are some of the, let's say, the breakthrough, or how you're trying to break through these barriers and get young women to see the light, that it's just a blip in the road, like keep on going, don't give up.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a system level challenge and it needs a system approach, right? And yet, how do you not try and boil the ocean when there's so many competing sort of factors in these decisions? But we have taken a pretty comprehensive ecosystem approach to our solution that includes components that are focused on building agency and resiliency in women themselves, their belief systems and ability to manage the realities of the workforce while also impacting her immediate work environment. We don't claim we're going to top-down change an organization's culture. At current pace, that's a couple centuries away. And we can't afford to wait for organizations to do all of that hard work to truly create fully inclusive environments. And so our program includes a combination of a proprietary leadership development curriculum, soft skills, durable skills, whatever you want to call them, but all the things you're not taught in school that are really important to your career, things like how I show up, how I want to show up, understanding my values, understanding my triggers, how do I emotionally regulate, how do I give feedback, receive feedback, all sorts of things about knowing yourself and being able to intentionally lead yourself in the workplace. Yeah. We talk a lot about people and relationships, where in this agent stage, it's influencing up and out and teams and how you perform on those teams and the roles that you play. We talk about results leadership. So very technically oriented folks are often very focused on the what they do, the how they do it, the methods they do it, all really good, important things. But when you're in business, these are all things that you need to then translate into the so what, the why, how this drives a business forum forward, how it addresses a bottom line issue, how it addresses a customer pain point, whatever it might be, and to be able to communicate your work and outcomes rather than activities. And then we work with women on personal brands, thought leadership, putting their ideas out in the world. We put them in cohorts of communities of 20 other early career women in STEM. So now if you're the one, the only, the few on your immediate work team, this is a place where you have people who look like you that may experience things that you can be in community with. That's all facilitated by an ICF certified coach. They meet once a month. And then what's really unique about our programming is that the companies that work with us commit to their manager being involved in the programming too.
Oh, I love that.
Because we know people join companies and quit bosses. Yeah. And you can have the best company in the world, and if you have a terrible boss, you're not going to thrive. Yeah. And like on the flip side of that, you could have an awesome boss in a pretty crappy company and find success in thriving. So that critical relationship with the boss is something that we really look at, that dual coaching arrangement where we're providing support both to the participant, but also to those managers who likely haven't had coaching, leadership development themselves and are really in need of it if they want to be more empathetic and inclusive in the way that they lead their teams. They're young, right? They're first line managers, and it's like, and they're not set up for success either. we have two challenges. One is we need to find ways for women to commit to careers in technology so they can address those things of, yes, I believe I have the abilities. Two, my expected outcomes are positive. And three, the perceived barriers that I experience in this organization, I have ways to address them, or I have tools and tricks and sort of things to allow her to see a path forward. So that like staying is like KPI number one. The second is, can we get you to promotion readiness? Right?
Yeah. What a beautiful program and timeline. I wish I had something like that when I came out of grad school.
Every woman of a certain age says, oh my God, if I had a coach at 25 or 28 or whatever it was, or if I had like my personal board of directors in my 20s versus even understanding that was a thing or something I needed to be able to navigate the world of work, or I had learned how to have crucial conversations with my boss. Mm-hmm. Right?
I mean, you're dealing with a lot of introverts, right? And a lot of us, we have a hard time conveying how we feel and sharing our feelings, you know, in a way that's non-emotional. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, I went straight from science at the bench to executive, and I was like, whoa, this is what it's like up here.
Yeah.
It is wild. Right? To say the least. Triggers, all that stuff, you know. And it's a long haul. It's, you know, change management is not something that happens overnight. We got to break some of those habits, right? We're human.
Yeah. And if we can start with women, you know, the big thing is if we can instill a sense of belonging and agency and courage in those young women where they see, I mean, the realities are the realities. These workplaces are full of bias and barriers. People still experience harassment. They get passed over for promotion. There are so many things where it's like, we just have not moved the needle that far. And that's just the way that it is right now. But if those women see all that and they think, you know what, I have the support structures and knowledge and tools where it's like, yeah, I get that this is not my fault, but it still is my problem. Like, and it isn't our fault. It is not our fault that the patriarchy is alive and well. But if we want to have successful, thriving careers, it's our problem, which is not fair, but it's a reality. And if those women don't shrink, if they feel like there's a path forward and that they can be happy and successful, like, wow, game changing, right? That they're not just surviving tech, they're thriving in it.
Yeah, I think you know, one of the areas I wanted to ask you about, but you've touched upon it in so many ways, but maybe there's something you just want a few bullet points you want to throw out, but just from your own experiences and what you're going through with your company right now, what are the most significant changes facing women in leadership today? Not, you know, just in the science, but in general. I mean, what are we up against here?
Oh, well, it would have been a different answer a year ago, right? So like, let's just put that out there. I think what's really interesting is we saw progress and we saw more and more women in leadership, and we're losing that ground. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing also, I think, women really recognizing that the systems are so set up in a way that doesn't allow them to thrive. And they're hitting a point, and maybe the pandemic did this, where you take stock of your life and am I feeling fulfilled or whatever. And I know a lot of women who are dropping the mic and getting out of corporate and trying to find something more fulfilling. Yeah. So we're losing our role models too. It was like, if things weren't going well at work, go fix yourself. It's a you thing. You're too much. You're too little. You need to speak up. You need to speak less. I remember when a female executive called me after a meeting, and said, Andrea, you would be far more effective if you spoke 30% less. And of course she was a scientist because she had a number to it. And it's like, and to be fair, it's like there's a kernel of truth in most feedback.
Yeah.
But what she failed to realize is like, I am totally an external processor.
Yeah.
I am someone where it's like, I love like throwing ideas and then it's like half baked as it's coming out. And then I'll say it again, but in a more baked way. But that's very much who I am and where my genius sits. I'm not the person that sits back and has a carefully crafted response to everything in advance. And it's like the first take is the perfect take. And in my organization at the time, there was a way to be a leader. There was a way to show up. And my authentic style of being an external processor went against company kind of grain. right?
Wow.
Now, it was valuable enough feedback that it's like, yeah, there's a point there and I probably really need to pay a bit of attention to it. But the bigger message was assimilate to the way we want you to be, Andrea.
Yeah. Then you're not going to be your genius, though.
Correct, because my muchness is my magic.
I feel kindred spirits here. You, by suppressing your authentic self, they actually were building a fire in you. And you're like, here comes Andrea, like, I'm out of here.
People are like, oh my God, it's a startup. You must really be struggling, to get corporate clients in this climate and all these types of things. And are you going to keep doing it? I'm like, oh, like friends, this is fuel on the fire. Yeah. I'm like, women are going to need more structured support than ever because of these policies. Wow. And it's like in the policy around this and the reality in STEM, it's like, so you have all this anti-DE&I blowback. STEM jobs are growing 3 to 5 times faster than all other job categories, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that is before we reshore and onshore all of these STEM intensive industries like pharmaceuticals and automotives and semiconductors. So we're already at this supply deficit. We're making it harder and harder for college. And not to say college is the only pathway into STEM. There's a whole host of things that I see happening on the fringes that I hope become mainstream about bringing workers in there. But we don't have the numbers. The math is not mapping in the STEM workforce space. And so you see this, and we have to be able to attract and retain all sorts of people and new communities into these fields if we're ever going to hit those numbers, because we don't have enough people sitting on the bench looking for jobs, right? So the supply demand is just not working. And I'm like, the DE&I policy relative to the realities of what these businesses are facing are just completely incompatible.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like one hand's not talking to the other in this environment. Well, let's pull out. I know we're coming on time here. There's 2 more questions I have for you. That's really the basis of the podcast, and you've really dug in here on some of the areas, but what would you say was your one good, one bad, and one ugly thus far?
I want to answer this in sort of 2 different realms, both like my corporate good, bad, and ugly, and then like startup world, because I think there's value in potentially for your audience in either one of those spaces or realms. And so on the good in the corporate was always about teams and the people I got to work with and the teams that I built from the ground up. It's amazing. It's like I called them special forces. Like it was these people who were so good at their jobs, so focused on the mission and worked so well together. And it's because we built a culture of authenticity and belonging. Mm-hmm. And seeing the fruits of that, because that was how I led and how I always wanted to be led, but frankly wasn't but to see the outcome of this cohesive, high performing team, man, what a good. The bad in corporate, man, fighting for everything, every inch, told, to be patient, taking on extra responsibilities before getting the title, like all of the things. It was just, and
not getting paid, right? Not getting paid for it too.
I wrote 17,000 words on this. When I had to detox and process, I read my story and I cry for her because there were so many patterns that when it's happening, the death by a thousand cuts, it just wasn't sinking in until I looked at it in totality. And then the ugly in corporate, I think due to all of that, I convinced myself that the strife was a productive struggle. Mm. And really it was personal sacrifice. Mm. But I allowed myself to think, oh, this is all worth it at my expense. Right. And I think what happened was the physical response. The ugly is that I had chest pain every day for the better part of a year. Wow. Right. I had a moment when my husband was traveling a lot internationally at the time and wasn't in the country. And my son was maybe 8 or 9. And I was having chest pain that was abnormal. It wasn't my normal anxiety feeling chest pain. I was like, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? And I looked at my son and I said, do you know how to dial 911? right? And so, I mean, that's ugly. That's some really ugly stuff when you manifest all of that work stress in your body, and our body keeps score. I love that book or whatever. I've not read the book, but I love the premise of what that's about. So that's the kind of corporate good, bad, ugly, right? On the startup side, man, it's like so much is good, right? Not easy, but man, it's good. We just got commitment for our August start cohort for 10 women from one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. So that's huge, like, huge, like, validation of what we're doing to have the support from such a household brand name that I won't mention. I think on the bad, we talked about it in the startup world, the DE&I blowback, right? We have to figure out, we thought we were going to have tailwinds on that, right? Where we were going to have more support for doubling down on, you know, women focused programs for other organizations, right? On people of color, all sorts of whatever. And we got the opposite, right? So that's like bad, but we're going to navigate it. Like, I feel confident in that. And then I think in the ugly for startups, this reality that 2% of capital goes to female founders, but founder teams with at least one woman outperform other startups. That's really messed up, right? And so much so that it's like my business partner and I, we have made a very conscious decision to bootstrap for as long as we can.
Wow.
And then once we're able to demonstrate and have more of these wins under our belt, then we have preferential terms, right? We have more leverage when we go raise. And the who we raise from, if we need to raise, like, I doubt it would be traditional, like, VC firms that are run by a bunch of male suits, right? There's all these interesting organizations that are popping up recognizing this challenge, and women capital are investing in other women. Here in North Carolina, there's a group called Lila, and it's like, and they're focused on women angels and investors. And I encourage to see more and more of that to address this capital flow problem.
Wow. Yeah. I love the differences in the two different worlds. You know, it's pretty remarkable. All right. So my last question for you, unfortunately we have to end. I could sit here and talk to you all day.
Likewise.
You know, I feel we all have our own superpower. What would you say Andrea's superpower is?
Oh, courage.
Yeah.
For sure.
We started with courage. Yep.
Yeah. It's like, and I find that it's contagious. And so I let that, you know, courage flag fly a lot to model it for others, because I think if we all recognize our own power, I mean, women are really smart. We're really capable. We're able to do a whole lot of things. We've got society holding us back. But if we had the courage to buck all that and say, to hell with you, I'm going anyway. And I think that's why we see this sort of blowback, is that there's fear out there that women really could be a force if we don't get thrown back to the dark ages.
I think they're afraid.
Yeah. And we can't have women be afraid. We have to have women stepping into their courage.
Yeah. Well, Andrea, this has been fantastic. I'm so motivated by what you guys are doing. There's a lot of, you know, parallels there. I know we'll constantly be communicating and, you know, throwing some stuff either each other's way, because this is a huge passion of mine. I mentor a lot of young women in science, and I'm going to get the word out. We're excited that you shared your story, and I cannot wait to launch this podcast. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been just a pleasure to talk with you today. Well, I really enjoyed it. It's like, anytime someone gives me a microphone, I'm down. Like, I got some shit to say, and if someone wants to listen, and it's like, and I have this, like, part of the challenge is like, I have like this ridiculous optimism. I mean, the world's gone to shit. Let's be clear.
I know, but we need more people like you. That's the thing, you know?
I believe.
Yeah.
We can't, like, I believe anything is possible.
Yes. We need that glass half full, not empty, right?
Yeah. It's like, I don't mind calling a spade, but I also want to be like, and again, use that as your fuel, right? Yeah. Use it as validation that we're making this progress. And it's like, and again, I think it's like, I look at women, if we all self-actualized and got to the place where it's like none of us had any fucks left in the bag, And it's like, and we just locked arms with each other. We pooled our resources and capital. We like saw the flaws, the mistakes, and that I'm going to build better. I can build something better. Like we are limitless. It's like, we're already the better sex.
Oh yeah. We definitely are limitless if we're allowed to be limitless.
Well, and we've got to, like, it's not a lot, like, nothing is given, it's all taken. We have to go take it. If we're waiting to be chosen for some program or chosen for a promotion or no, we got to go build it. We got to go take it. It's like power is never relinquished, like, without a fight, and you got to go take it. We have got to move beyond advising women to play golf and drink brown liquor. I'm like, all that we are doing is teaching women to assimilate into systems that were never designed or built for for us, right? And I'm
going
like,
back to the 1950s.
Goddamn Christ. And so that was like my comment. I said, my question is, I said, you are all incredibly accomplished women with position, power, resource, influence. I said, what are you doing to create better systems or dismantle the existing systems for the next generation?
What'd she say?
She's fumbled on that question because she's spent her entire career assimilating to
to the men.
One of the guys.
I call it 80 syndrome. You know, like when women were starting to come up through the ranks in finance or science or whatever. And, you know, like 9 to 5 is a primary example of that movie. I mean, come on. You know? Like women were all secretaries, right? My mom was a secretary, a legal secretary. And they just had to bow to the male way. You know, and then those women got this like big chip on the ones that made it through, right? They have a big chip on their shoulder. And so those of us who come under them, I mean, most of them are now, of course, retiring in that, but I've experienced some of them and they're like, well, I went through it, so you have to. So I'm going to treat you like shit. And I'm like, what?
Yes, I know. I
don't get it.
The system on the system's terms.
Yeah.
They expect you to do the same rather than use all their power and privilege to actually change the fucking system rather than be the keeper of the system.
Thank you for being here and for helping us celebrate the ingenuity, resilience, and expertise of women in science. If you enjoyed this episode, it would be a huge help if you could give us a 5-star rating or review and share this conversation with all the rock star women in your network. Until next time.